I'm sorry, but you're not audible, sir.
He's meeting with some network problem.
So can we continue? Shobhan sir, can we continue with the session? Suresh sir, can we continue with the session as Shobhan sir is having some technical problems?
Okay, please continue.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you, Shobhan sir, for your fruitful session. After the fruitful inauguration by Shobhan sir, I would like to now invite our resource person, Dr. Shivadasan P., Professor of Department of History, University of Calicut. So I would like to welcome you for your resource session.
Okay, thank you, Aryan Bose. Thank you, Dr. Suresh. Thank you, Dr. Suraj, Professor Shobhanan, my friends of the Department of History, University of College, and all those faculty members, friends, research scholars, and students of the University College, Trivandrum, and also other institutions in India. I understand that a lot of people from other states are attending the webinar. So I welcome you all to the session. At the very outset, I thank the University Department of History, University of College, and actually I am an alumni of the department. I did my PhD in the Department of History, University of College, and when I was working at SN College, Chembarandi in Trivandrum. Presently, I am doing my service in University of Calicut. So I heard Professor Shobhanan talking about the Salt Satyagraha, the Dandi March, and its impact upon the society in Kerala. And it is true that our and books written upon Gandhi's influence upon Kerala society. And many years before that, immediately after Gandhi's presence as the leader of the masses, we see Malayalis writing about Gandhi, and along with Gandhi, they began to popularize Indian National Congress also. Indian National Congress, after its formation in 1885, became famous, popular in Kerala under a Malayalam name called Bharata Mahajana Sabha. Bharata Mahajana Sabha was a name given to Indian National Congress by the Malayalis when it took birth in northern India in 1885. Here you can see Raman Unnithan. He was a man from the southern Kerala region called Travancore. He wrote a book on Indian National Congress. So we have to study how the ideology of Indian National Congress became gradually rooted in the regional localities of India. Here you can see the Malayalam literature, Malayalam print media publishing books about the ideology of Indian National Congress in 1890s. There is a rare book upon the Indian National Congress because many of us were not able to get this book, and I was able to discover this book from an old collection. It is written by Raman Unnithan about the Indian National Congress, because the ideology of Indian National Congress is very integral to the ideology of Gandhism. That is why a search for old manuscripts about Indian National Congress is very important while discussing this issue. We see the familiarizing or introducing the leaders of the national movement in local literature, vernacular literature by different persons. Here is a book telling you the lives and activities of national leaders, not only the leaders of Indian National Congress, but also nationalists vibrant in different areas of activity. Another book on Bharata Mahajana Sabha, that means Indian National Congress, by a different person in a vernacular style, in a poetic style, written by then G.P. Nair, another person talking about Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi became Mahatma to the Indian people in later years. So that the term Mahatma was adorned upon Gandhi after his visit to southern India. In southern India at that time, there was a stronger activity of the Theosophical Society at Adayar near Madras. Gandhi, along with his wife Kasturba, visited Adayar in 1915. Part of his Indian visit to see villages, meet ordinary people. He went to the Adayar headquarters of the Theosophical Society. If you read the Theosophical Society, you can see that the Theosophical Society believes that by becoming a member of the Theosophical Society, a true member of the Theosophical Society, he will be able to become an eternal being, even with the disappearance of his physical body. Such people are called Mahatmas. So they believe that there are a lot of Mahatmas living in the world without their physical body, and they communicate with the leaders of the Theosophical Society. Annie Besant in 1917 had declared that one such Mahatma had advised her to start the home rule movement. So that kind of spiritual belief is there in the activities of the Theosophical Society. So when Gandhi visited Adayar campus in 1915, the Theosophists, including in the presence of Rabindranath Tagore, they said that M.K. Gandhi is not an ordinary person. He is having the spirit of the great beings who lived in the world many centuries ago. That is why M.K. Gandhi is becoming the leader of the hope of the repressed people, the colonized people, the suppressed people in the world. They said that Gandhi is a true Mahatma. So from that moment onwards, we see the print media in India supporting nationalism began to say that M.K. Gandhi is Mahatma Gandhi. So naturally, he became Mahatma to the ordinary people. So in that name, a large number of Malayalam books began to appear in the print world, Mahatma Gandhi, and he became Mahatma Gandhi from M.K. Gandhi. Okay. Similarly, there were attempts to understand Gandhi and the origin of Indian National Congress in Kerala when the Indian National Congress tried to write a history of their organization party in 1935 when it was celebrating its 50th year of existence. A.K. Pulla, who was actually a man from southern Kerala, went to northern Kerala to take part in the national movement. You can see that, as Shogun sir said, the salt satyagraha and the civil disobedience movement was a great opportunity to bring all Malayalis in a common platform, the fight for freedom. So the people from southern India moved to north. Some people from northern Kerala moved to south. So we began to live like a unified people, Malayali people, from 1930s onwards. So from that onwards, we began to talk about a unified Kerala. So along with the national spirit, the Malayalis also identified their identity, their regional identity, linguistic identity. So we began to talk about Kerala Pradesh Congress Committee from 1920 onwards. So this book also tell you in a very limited sense about the origin of Indian National Congress and the influence of Gandhi in Kerala before 1920. Here you can see in a local place called Kollam in Kerala, Gandhi's statue was erected after Gandhi became a popular figure in Indian politics, where you can see small girls and the leaders of the Indian National Congress standing and also erecting and paying homage to Gandhi adorees. And you can see different pictures where Gandhi visiting local places in Kerala when he paid visit to Kerala region, and he visited Kerala in 1920. Then he again came to Kerala in 1924 when there was historic satyagraha against untouchability at Vaikam in 1924. Vaikam Satyagraha is an historic incident in the history of Hinduism and history of India itself. Because at Vaikam in 1924, for the first time, the nationalists took up the issue of untouchability as a grave issue to be discussed along with the freedom movement. Because the freedom from foreign rule was to be the topmost aim of the freedom movement. But at the same time, the nationalists in India, in Kerala, found it in a broader sense. They wanted to destroy untouchability also along with the freedom, achievement of freedom in India. So we undertook the responsibility of fighting untouchability. So in 1924, under the with the direction, blessings of the Indian National Congress, we organized this. Gandhi visited Vaikam to support the Satyagraha, and it was the first experiment in India against caste system. So that is why it is a historic incident, and we have to study how the ordinary people got infatuated with these kinds of progressive struggles. Naturally, from 1924 onwards, our national movement became different type of activity. Not just a fight against foreign rule, but a fight against social evils. Here you can see, if you go through the documents of Vaikam Satyagraha, you can see ordinary people, by carrying a flag, Indian national flag of the Indian National Congress, moved from faraway places and taking part in the Vaikam Satyagraha. People from Punjab, people from different parts of India coming to Vaikam and take part in this movement against social evil. Okay, so Gandhi was becoming popular day by day. So when the Department of History was conducting such local history studies, we were able to identify very important sources connected with the influence of Gandhi in localities. Here you can see a person called P.N. Nambishan. He was a freedom fighter. Unfortunately, he left us few years ago, but we had a great opportunity of meeting this man. Actually, he was sick, but he talked to us in a very slow voice and showed to us his diary. He was very active in Indian nationalism in Kerala, and he showed us his diary. You can see the diary, the page. Uh, Next page. See, this is his diary, and he wrote this page of the diary after the murder of Mahatma Gandhi. Here you can see the page is marked in a very different way, where he is explaining about the murder of Gandhi by fanatics. P.N. Nambishan. Here you can see the date of his diary page, 31st January 1948, where he is telling that there was Swadeshi Mantra observation, and also passive resistance and hunger struggle in different parts of Kerala after hearing the murder of Gandhi. So you have to see how we responded to the activity of the fanatics against Gandhi in 1940 January 30. So such documents are available even today in localities. Then I again identified another diary written by Dr. V. Gopalan Nair of a locality called Arikod. He also recorded the same thing in his diary on January 31st, 1948. He says that Gandhi was murdered by a fanatic called Nathuram Vinayak Godse, and Nathuram Vinayak Godse, NVG, he wanted to establish the Hindu Rashtra, and he is the editor of is called Hindu Rashtram, and he is the he killed Gandhi, Gandhiji de Malayali. So in that sense, we can see how the locality appropriated, digested and their protest, the voice of their protest against the cruel deed of these fanatics against Gandhi. So in that way, Gandhi was very popular very popular and very close to the heart of the Malayali people by with the achievement of independence. So let us go back to the 19th century. In 19th century, our activity became broader, and we began to take up issues of social change and the issues of nation by the end of 19th century. That opportunity gradually evolved from different sorts of experiences. In 1857, we had a North Indian struggle against colonialism, which is called Sepoy Mutiny or First War of Independence. But actually, it was cruelly suppressed by the British Raj. But that memory of that struggle became became a great inspiration for the Malayali, the whole Indian people to fight against British colonialism in a stronger way. So gradually, in a refined way, in an organizational way, there was the formation of different associations, political parties, and finally the Indian National Congress. So the response to colonialism took shape in a different way by the end of 19th century. Here you can see a document. This document is written by a Malayali called C.E. Govinda. He is talking about the the Jubilee celebration of Victoria. The Jubilee celebration of Victoria was an opportunity to the Indian people in the end of 19th century to form, to raise, to erect public bodies and public platforms. If you look at the history of India, you can see that the VJT institutions, Victoria Jubilee institutions, took birth in India in the end of 19th century. Here we have a Victoria Jubilee Town Hall in Trivandrum city, and we have a hospital under the name of Victoria in Kollam. And if you go into interior into the villages in Kerala, you can see the birth of libraries, hospitals, Ayurvedic hospitals, and schools, etc. after the name of Victoria Jubilee. So you have to study the history of this Jubilee celebration. This Jubilee celebration told the Indian people to raise public money and erect public institutions in memory of Victoria. So that gave an opportunity to the local people to assemble together and raise public institutions and public platforms. These public institutions gave an opportunity, as Jürgen Habermas said, to create public sense, public debates, and public bodies. So large number of people became the leaders of these public bodies. Naturally, we see in the local level, along with the Indian National Congress, an opportunity for the local people to assemble together. So we see public spaces with libraries, hospitals, schools, clubs, and in some places in Kerala, public wells were erected in memory of Jubilee. In some places, public ponds were erected. So there are records in archives telling you how Jubilee was celebrated in different localities in India. So in the larger level in northern India also, you can see Victoria Jubilee terminus, Victoria Jubilee colleges, hospitals, etc. in different parts of it. So all over India, the celebration of Victoria Jubilee was an opportunity for the creation of the public space. During this period, Gandhi, as a Europeanized man, totally a westernized man, came back to India after education in Britain, and he was requested his legal service by a merchant, Indian merchant in South Africa. So he went to serve him in South Africa. And by that time, he had become a different man. Even though he was a westernized man, he was wearing this cloth, this European dress at that time. He was a totally different man after reading large number of religious books. So gradually he was changing. So his attire, his dressing style was something like this when he went to South Africa. Okay. See, in South Africa, he began different experiments because of his personal experiences of racial injustice. Naturally, he started a farm called Tolstoy Farm. There is a good book prepared by the Gandhi Sabarmati Ashram called Gandhi in South Africa. Those who are interested in understanding Gandhi in detail have to read this book, Gandhi in South Africa, because it was in South Africa, Gandhi shaped his views: passive resistance, non-violence, civil disobedience, non-cooperation. So all types of his activities, ideologies got shaped in South Africa because of his personal experience there. So he wanted to evolve, develop a newer strategy to confront racialism and colonialism with the support of the black people and with the support of the Indian migrants in South Africa. So here you can see in Tolstoy Farm, which was an experimental farm to practice his new ideology and new political weapons. He was this photograph shows the people who were part and parcel of this ashram. And during this period, our print culture was also developing. In Kerala, the first association, organization formed by the Kerala people was in the modern way, were the landlords. The landlords in Kerala, from the north to south, decided to form their own association and fight for rights. This was in 1881, 4 years before the formation of Indian National Congress. So the landlords were the first group in Kerala to understand the laws of their rights. So in the age of modernity in 19th century, they wanted to recapture their leadership in the society. They enjoyed such a leadership in pre-British India. So they wanted to recapture their supremacy in the society by the right over forest, right over land, right over the people, etc. So these some of their rights were losing in the 19th century with the arrival of colonial modernity. So they decided to form their association, which is called Landlord Association. In Malayalam, it is called Janmi Sabha. This came into being in 1881. Immediately after founding this organization, they started a monthly journal called Janmi. Janmi, which means landlord. So this magazine was debating different issues affecting their fortunes in the public space. Landlords' fortunes, which were they wanted to modernize their activity. They wanted to experiment in new agricultural patterns. They wanted to modernize accounting. They wanted to become the leaders of the society like in the olden days. So these issues are discussed in this journal. So this is a very useful book to understand what was happening in later part of 19th century in regional localities in India. In order to understand what was happening to the landlords in 19th century when industrial modernity was appearing, you have to see this book. These volumes are available even in Trivandrum in the Kerala Studies section of the University Library. So go through this book and understand what was happening to the landlord and how they were confronting with different issues. So you can see the landlord, and Travancore Raja was also a member of that body. So they effectively used print culture to protect their rights. Okay. Different types of landlords were finding out now newer problems in 19th century in the age of modernity. Here you can see a man. He was a Brahmin man, a Nambudiri, but in picture you can see he is a modernized man. He is wearing a coat like a European man and wearing a pant, and he is taking the photograph like an educated man. Yes, he is a educated Nambudiri man, but the thing is that he was modernized, but actually he was facing different issues in his family life, because traveling to faraway places, traveling the train, going to the court, etc., had created a lot of problem because untouchability was a vital issue in the traditional society. And we, while doing this local history camp, discovered his diary. We saw the diary written in 1893, and very fortunately we found a page. In this page he says that he took part in the Indian National Congress meeting at Madras in 1894. It was for the second time Indian National Congress had its annual session at Madras in 1894. So this man, his name is Shankaran Nambudiri. He, along with 3 or 4 people, decided to attend the Indian National Congress session at Madras as delegates from Malabar. So this shows you how these people from different interior localities began to take part in the national activity, like attending Indian National Congress meetings, and also presenting view and opinion of the regional localities, experiences of colonialism, etc. Here you can see how the modernized landlord was presenting his issue in the age of colonial modernity. So these pages are explaining how the people in 19th century were taking part in the meetings of the Indian National Congress, and what were their experiences of traveling to a faraway place. So at that time, Madras, today called Chennai, was a destination point, the destination of luxury, destination of industrial modernity, destination of development, etc. The Madras city. So traveling to Madras city was a great experience. So those who came back to their village after paying visit to Madras had a lot of things to tell to the people. They came back with large number of goods, newer ideology, new information, modernity, etc. So this was a travel of modernity to the villages. So along with that, nationalist ideology was also coming with them. Very interesting thing that if you read this Janmi, you can see the reference about Gandhi. In 1890s, Gandhi was engaged in organizing struggles against rationalism in South Africa. So this Janmi undertook this responsibility, because in Indian National Congress in 1890s, there was a debate about the necessity of helping MK Gandhi in South Africa. Now, Indians have the Indian National Congress said that we have to become proud because our son MK Gandhi is organizing a movement in South Africa against racialism and British dominance. So we have to help him with necessary funds. At that time, large number of people were migrating to South Africa to work in the mines and plantations in South Africa run by the colonial people. So people from southern India, especially Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, etc., had traveled to South Africa to become staff of these companies. Like that, these Indian people assembled before Mahatma MK Gandhi in South Africa. So he had become a leader of the Indian masses in South Africa by that time. So the Indian National Congress undertook the responsibility of giving fund to the movement of Gandhi in South Africa. Here in Jenmi magazine, we can see the organization of a fund called South African Fund in 1894 to help Gandhi's struggle in South Africa. And details are there in Jenmi magazine about Gandhi, familiarizing Gandhi, talking about Gandhi, his activity of fighting racialism, slavery in South Africa, etc. So this was the first moment in which Malayalis people understood Gandhi, his virtues, his ideals, his leadership in 19th century, and the necessity of Gandhi in taking up the leadership of the Indian people. So that was a first experience, and this magazine is accessible to students and research scholars, which are available in the Kerala Studies section of the University Library, Kerala University Library. So in 1887, this was the first Madras session of the Indian National Congress. Such literature were also available to the Malayali people, educated Malayali people, through the print media in libraries and other government repositories. Naturally, you can see 1887 Madras session. So holding a session in Madras was providing an opportunity to the South Indian people to attend the session and meet national leaders, understand the problems of India, and understand India itself. Because people from faraway regions, different states, different regions with different habits came to Madras, and we saw India, the plurality of Indian culture. People having different attire, different food practices, different languages, etc., joined together in the venue in the Pandal of Indian National Congress, and we began to see what India is. So naturally, the sprouting of national spirit, the unity in diversity, unity of the Indian people, and understanding our common enemy, the British Raj. So the Indian National Congress played a significant role in rising nationalism in India by having its sessions in different parts of India. So holding the sessions in Madras in 1887 and in 1893-94, etc., was an opportunity for the Malayali people to understand Mahatma Gandhi. By the beginning of the First World War, we see the popularization of Gandhian ideology along with the leadership of Ani Besant. You have to see that Ani Besant was a famous figure in South Indian politics in the 19th century itself. So Ani Besant was taking over not only religious and spiritual issues, social issues. She undertook the leadership of the political movement during the First World War. She was a spiritual activist as the leader of the Theosophical Society. But with the breaking out of First World War, she decided to intervene in politics. So we suddenly see the declaration of the Home Rule movement. While organizing the Home Rule movement in southern India, she made national issues. She very vibrant in every villages because by utilizing the branches of the Theosophical Society. So we see in Kerala, like other localities in India, the sprouting up of the Home Rule movement as a strong national movement in different forms. The result was, as Gandhi said in 1921, Ani Besant had made Home Rule a mantram in every cottage. In southern India, the true national movement appeared with the announcement of the Home Rule movement. In Kerala, this Home Rule movement was called Malayala Samsthana Swayambharana League because it was talking about Home Rule. I mean, the dominion status, not complete independence. Home Rule was talking about half independence. I mean, participation of Indians in Indian administration, not complete independence. And we changed this view to Purna Swaraj in 1930s with the civil disobedience movement. Okay, so this Home Rule movement, Gandhi, Ani Besant, etc., also utilized Gandhian principle to popularize the movement against British Raj and also wiping out evils in Indian society. Here you can see a photograph where Gandhi, Sarojini Naidu, and Satyamurthy, etc., sitting together during the time of the Home Rule movement. See, as I said earlier, every movement was bringing forward different contradictory experiences. When we were talking about the national ideal, naturally there came the issue of casteism. Naturally, there came the issue of regional differences. Naturally, there came the issue of untouchability. I mean, banning of temple to the depressed classes. These issues were making our national movement more complicated during the Home Rule movement, also during the time of the Gandhian ideology. Here you can see Gandhi was becoming popular day by day, and by the end of the First World War, we see the Home Rule movement became a failure. The Brahmins undertook the leadership. So naturally, the Dravidians began to oppose Brahmin oligarchy, and the during the time of non-cooperation movement, we see large number of Indians opposing the non-cooperation movement and joining with the British people for supporting the Dravidian movement. And contradictions in plurality began to emerge in Indian politics along with the growth of the national ideology. So in 1922, we see the Nationalist Party partitioned into two groups. One group, Swarajis, the other group, non-cooperators. They fought together because of difference in opinion. And the British government utilized this opportunity to divide us. I mean, by dividing Indian nationalism. Here you can see one president of the Indian National Congress who became the president as a Malayali in 1890s called C. Shankaran Nair. And he was an admirer of Gandhi in the beginning of 20th century. But with the withdrawal of the non-cooperation movement, with the events connected with the non-cooperation movement, he opposed Gandhi and criticized Gandhi. A Malayali called C. Shankaran Nair, he was once the president of Indian National Congress, criticized Gandhi in 1922 and wrote a book called Gandhi and Anarchy. I shall show you that book later in this presentation itself. So during the First World War and the Home Rule movement, we see Gandhi, Annie Besant, Home Rule, and non-cooperation, etc., entering into the hearts of the villages. We had district political conferences during the First World War in different places called Palakkad, Manjeri, Kozhikode, Vadagara, Thalassery, etc. These were the first political experiments of bringing people of different strata in a common platform. We see all these conferences where, I mean, the preliminary experiences of the Malayali people in doing political activity. Before that, there were no such conferences. So by setting the agenda, for deliberations in the conference, by organizing the movement, by collecting memberships, by selecting delegates, etc., we began to practice forming political associations during the time of First World War. We see 1920, there was a meeting at a place called Manjeri, it was called the 5th Malabar District Political Conference. In this conference, we saw an important incident. And that incident was the splitting up of the nationalist body. I mean, the body associated with the political work into two groups. One group was the landlord group. The landlord group, like the Janmi Sabha, etc., were aiming at the formation of an India according to their wish. They wanted a India having the supremacy of landlords and the upper classes. But by the First World War, by the Home Rule movement, and after the Russian Revolution of 1917, we see large number of ordinary people, especially the middle class people, began to take part in political activity, and they demanded their India, which is totally different from the landlord India. So they went to the conference, they voted in when resolutions were presented. Naturally, the middle class got upper hand, and Annie Besant and her supporters, the landlords, had to walk out from this conference. That was the end of landlord leadership in Indian nationalism and the commencement of the middle class leadership in Indian nationalism. So such a contradictions emerged in Kerala politics with the 1920 and with the announcement of the non-cooperation movement. You can see that our national movement was actually a national movement, our non-cooperation movement was actually a middle class movement. For the first time, when Gandhi visited Calicut, he had used a term, the middle class. Before that, he didn't use such a word. He was talking about the Indian people. Now he told that the middle class have to attend the political movement. They have to abandon courts. They have to abandon schools. They have to close their shops. So he invited the ordinary people, the middle class people, to become part and parcel of the national movement and make our movement against colonial Raj a truly mass movement. So such a change, a mass change appeared in the mass character of nationalism appeared in the 1920s with the announcement of the non-cooperation movement. Just 1 year back, you might have heard about Gandhi declaring an hartal. And after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre of the British and also the declaration of the Rowlatt Acts, Gandhi decided to fight British colonialism in a different way. He wanted the support of the ordinary people. So in 1919, for the first time in Indian history, Gandhi declared that tomorrow will be National Hartal against British colonialism. See, National Hartal means unifying India without having class differences against British colonialism. This National Hartal was celebrated with great human support. Even illiterate people belonging to the different strata of Indian society, went to the street. They assembled in towns and village corners and protested against British colonialism. This commencement of mass nationalism in 1919 was splitting Indian nationalism into two parties, two groups. One group representing the group of mass nationalism, and the previous one, the vanishing one, representing landlord nationalism. I mean, the elite classes dreaming an India of the elite India. But with the arrival of the middle class, the ordinary people, we see the aiming of the establishment of India of the ordinary people, the middle class people. So such activity appeared in 1920 with the announcement of the. It was during this time we see, if you go through the vernacular literature available to the people in different archival repositories, you can see different magazines talking about the ordinary people talking about their India. Here you can see the public people talking about their representation in governance, their right to enter into public spaces. See, Pauran, which means citizen. This was a Malayalam magazine, appeared in 1890, 1918, 1919, etc., talking about the influence of non-cooperation movement in the Travancore region, which was ruled by a Raja. Here in this magazine, we can see Gandhi is debated in a detailed way. When Gandhi talked about the Swadeshi Vradam, the Swadeshi principle, that is discussed in this magazine, Swadeshi, this Pauran magazine, which is also available in the Kerala Studies section of the University Library in Trivandrum. So here in this magazine, you can see Gandhi's Champaran Satyagraha is debated. The Pauran magazine is reporting that Gandhi has undertaken the responsibility of saving the peasants of Champaran in Bihar. So Malayalam language, this magazine is reporting Gandhi's success in saving the aggrieved peasantry in Champaran region. So all this news was bringing the people of Kerala in close with the Gandhian ideology. So Gandhi was becoming popular day by day. Similarly, you can see Kheda Satyagraha, Gandhi's Kheda Satyagraha debated in the same magazine in its later issues. Similarly, Gandhi's leadership in organizing different sections of the people in northern India are also debated in Gujarat, in Kheda, in Ahmedabad, etc. are also debated in the same daily. For Kheda Satyagraha, the Pauran magazine says that it is Cairo Satyagraha. So such news represent the influence of Gandhi. More popular to supporter to Gandhi emerged in Kerala by the 1919, 1918, etc. Okay, so along with it, it is discussing different civic right issues. So the question, the rights of the citizen, became live. Debate about that issue became live with the Jallianwala Bagh incident and also the Hartal announcement of Gandhi and also the non-cooperation movement. All these incidents, Malayalis were not keeping silence when Gandhi was doing all this activity in southern India. You can see reflection of all these incidents, all these movements taking place in different parts of the world in Malayalam literature in a very live way. Along with it, in 1917, there was a revolution in Russia. It had inspired the ordinary working classes and peasants to fight dictatorship. Here you can see ordinary people began to take interest in political struggles and political participation when they saw that these vernacular dailies are representing such a revolution had taken place in Russia where dictatorship had ended and the workers had become the rulers of the state. So such news also began to appear in the vernacular dailies. Naturally, along with Gandhi, the message of communism and left ideology also became very popular in Kerala, and because of the literacy problem, because larger number of people were, Malayali people were literate, naturally they carried the message to their family, to their village, to their relatives. Naturally the ideology filtered to the lower classes. So they became very vibrant and our movement became a truly national movement, truly a civic rights movement by the second decade of the 19th century. So along with praising Gandhi's principle, the Malayali people understood that there are values, there are merits in Gandhian principle. But along with it, Malayalis also saw some problems with the Gandhian ideology. Here you can see C. Shankaran Nair, who was once the president of Indian National Congress in 1897. He was also a strong congressman, but by the end of non-cooperation movement, he became a critic of Mahatma Gandhi. So he said that Gandhi is traveling in the wrong way. His method of his political work is quite against the Indian spirit. So there was a split in Indian nationalism. Gandhi stood with the middle classes while the older group, Shankaran Nair and the Swarajist group, opposed Gandhi and they began to support British colonialism. So this Malayali, Shankaran Nair, wrote this book, Gandhi and Anarchy. Gandhi is creating manufacturing anarchy in India by creating mass nationalism. So here you can see this book was purchased by the British government and archival files shows that this book was purchased in huge number, printed in huge number and was distributed all over India by the British government to criticize Gandhi, to make Gandhi an anti-people man among the common masses. So this is C. Shankaran Nair. But in spite of these criticisms, Gandhi's popularity was increasing day by day. Here you can see a magazine printing one of its issues with Gandhi's photograph. Malayalakara is a very local publication, printed and distributed from a place called Kollam. Here Gandhi appeared even in the local publications as the hope of the Indian people. So Gandhi was changing day by day. When Gandhi went to London for a higher education, he was admiring the Western culture. But when he returned to India after education, he understood that there are problems in Western culture like racialism and also the superiority complex. So he did not change in his attire. He went to South Africa where he experienced racial injustice. Naturally, he started Tolstoy farm, Phoenix farm, etc. to experiment newer ideology. Along with that, his European dress was also changing. When in 1920, when he visited Kerala for the first time, visited Calicut city in 1920, we see Gandhi came to Kerala in this dress. He was wearing this kurta and a pajama, and he was talking to the people by telling them that ordinary people have to take up the issue of nationalism. They have become part and parcel of the freedom struggle. Only in that way we will be in a position to fight British colonialism. He advised students to boycott their classes. He advised wakils to boycott their courts. He advised government servants to abandon government jobs and become part of the national struggle. Naturally, while talking to these people in 1920 at Calicut city, he was behaving in this way. He was wearing this, but he was denoting the presence, the requisite, the importance of middle class participation in our national struggle. Later, we see in 1940s, he again he again learned a lot of things from his experience. He talked to the ordinary people. He talked to the untouchable classes. He talked to the marginalized. He started Harijan publication to talk about the issues of untouchability. And in 1942, he told people to do or die for the freedom of India. So Gandhi was understanding India day by day, and he was growing in intellectually, and also he was growing in every respect during the whole days of his participation with the freedom struggle. And along with it, Keralites and the Malayali people also read Gandhi in a different way, like the people different in different localities in India. So we read Gandhi in a different way, and we appreciated his secular values, and he became very dear to us. That is why I showed you Vishnu Nambishan and Gopalan Nair were weeping, and they had become mad when they heard that one fanatic had killed Gandhi on 30th January 1948. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shivadasan sir. Really, sir, your session was so curious to know about Mahatma Gandhi. Now, I would like to invite UV Shakila ma'am for vote of thanks. Please, ma'am.
Aryan,
Yes, sir.
please, some doubts. If anybody can doubts, please clarify. Please give
Yeah,
5 minutes.
right. Just I forgot. Now, people are free to ask questions. They are free to raise doubts and also make comments upon my presentation. Thank
I
you
would
all. Thank you,
request
Surya
the
sir.
participants to please put forward their doubts and question in the chat box. We can discuss it right now. Participants, please, I would request you to put forward your questions.
I hope that you are able to understand my lecture.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Participants, at least with no doubts, I would request you to please put forward your comments for sir's session. Please comment. How was the session? So we can see some of the comments. So there's a doubt. So there's a doubt.
Yeah. So, what was the impact of Gandhi visit to Kerala? So, actually, we were reading Gandhi from literature, but his personal visit to Kerala had created larger impact. And if you read Vaikam Muhammad Bashir says that he understood Gandhi after his meeting with Gandhi in the railway station. He talks about the divine touch he had with Gandhi because he was, as a student, he was a child then. He went to railway station to meet Gandhi because Gandhi had a reception in the railway station, and he was able to touch Gandhi. So, in many writings of Vaikam Bashir, he talks about that touch, divine touch he had upon the body of Gandhi. So that was a different sort of experience that the local people had. And if you read David Hardiman and you can see that even in those places, Gandhi had not paid visit, where there were local Gandhis, people living in the same way of Gandhi with those principles of Gandhian life, and they became the leaders of the society. Such local Gandhis appeared in every village in India, and Gandhi had never visited those villages. So that was the sort of Gandhi's impact upon the Indian people.
I would ask the participants to please put forward their questions.
Okay, if there are no such questions, I can add my phone number in the chat box. People can contact me and ask doubts personally if they wish.
So there's another question.
Yeah, no, that is right because I focused this issue in my lecture. In spite of Gandhi's contribution to Indian secularism and nationalism, we see a fanatic called Godse killing Gandhi in 1948. So that was the byproduct of our Indian nationalism. If you read it very critically, you can see that our nationalism had created a byproduct called Hindu nationalism. And the British government was also patronizing this sort of communalism to strengthen their exploitation. Naturally, their divide and rule policy and also the aspiration of the Savarna Hindu classes to recapture their leadership in Indian society as the owners of Indian property, as the makers of Indian slavery. They wanted to kill secular spirit in India. They found that Gandhi is responsible for integrating India in spite of its caste and communal differences. Naturally, they killed Gandhi as their strong enemy. Okay, so Gandhi's murder was a great lesson to us. It also shows us the side products, the contradictions of Indian national movement.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So now we shall
Okay,
conclude the session,
okay,
the discussion.
okay, thank you.
Thank you for your valuable time, sir. Now I would make a note here that the feedback forms will be provided in the WhatsApp group. If people who are not in participate or being added to that group, please go and be added in this group. You will be provided the link for your e-certificates. 100 certificates would be provided each day. Now I would call forward once again Dr. UV Shakila ma'am for her vote of thanks for the fruitful session of today's Mahatma Gandhi as in Malayali world. Ma'am, please come forward for your vote of thanks.
Hello, good afternoon, all of you. Respected dignitaries and participants online in the one-day intellectual discourse of the anniversary of the launch of Dandi March celebrations of India's 75 years of independence. It's a proud moment for the Department of History University College to become part of the national celebrations of India's 75 years of independence. My duty is to propose vote of thanks. I extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. B. Shobanan, former head of the Department of History and Dean of Social Sciences, University of Kerala, for his inspiring inaugural speech in the one-day seminar on the topic Mahatma in the Malayali world, the initial years. I also extend my gratitude on behalf of the Department of History, University College, to Professor Shivadasan, Professor, Department of History, University of Calicut, for his illuminating talk on the importance of Gandhi March and the role of Gandhi in the initial years of Indian nationalism in Kerala. Sir, both of you, Shobanan sir and Shivadasan sir, placed us for a moment in the searing heat of nationalism in Kerala. Thank you. I thank the coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Sudesh J, Assistant Professor, University College, for taking pains to organize a seminar during the vacation. I also thank all the participants who took pains to be online in the midst of the hectic preparations for exams. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shakila. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable and
Thank you,
wonderful
Suresh.
lecture. Very
Thank you,
simple
Suresh,
and
sir. Okay, thank you.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Shakila teacher.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would request the participants to please note that the feedback form link would be provided in the WhatsApp chat link. Please go and head forward for the link provided in the chat box. Thank you very much for your valuable time and patience. Participants can leave the session right now. Thank you all.